Joe Rogan tells a story and he leads into it by saying, I got this story from Dana. So you know how the game of telephone works, right? And now I'm doing the same thing. So I got a story from Joe Rogan that Joe Rogan got from Dana. Let's see how it goes. But the doctors brought Yoel in. Yoel had like a fracture in his orbital. They bring him in. And the doctor calls Dana and goes, this is the most unusual human being I have ever seen. And Dana's like, oh, yeah, he's a great athlete. You know, how's the eye doing? Like the doctor goes, no. Dana, I don't mean from an athletic standpoint. I mean from 40 years in practice. I've never seen a human being like this. And then begin to break down, medically speaking, the things that were unique about Yoel. And I've been telling you guys from the beginning, you know, because Yoel's got one of those bodies. He takes his shirt off and he's cloaked in success. He's in his 40s. He's still a top guy. And you just instantly go, heads. No, you're wrong. And by the way, USADA is not the holy grail for PEDs. My eyes are the holy grail for PEDs. I will tell you every time, not only if, I will tell you what, and I will never be wrong. And no, Yoel, the way he looks right now is the way he looked when he was 18. First time I ever saw Yoel Romero, he was 18. By the way, competed in the same weight class that he's in now. PEDs in this order make you bigger, stronger, faster. In that order. He weighs the same thing now that he weighed when he was 18. Which one of you can say that? I know I can't. I cannot make that claim. So, at any rate, the doctor comes out with how impressed he was. But I will tell you, even at 18, it was the same thing. I mean, I have just seen Yoel do some athletic feats that you haven't, because I follow wrestling. Nobody follows wrestling. I follow wrestling. So I've seen some. Then you've also seen them. And you want to know what one of the most athletic feats that he pulled was the dance-off he had with Adesanya. I swear to goodness I stand by that claim. I understand there's no championship and prestige in that. I'm talking about pure athleticism. When he is on stage with Adesanya, a dance-off breaks off, and Yoel Romero, while in street clothes, hits a backflips into the splits. Who amongst us can do a backflip? Some of you just raised your hand. So, well, you know, Chael, matter of fact, I can't. Okay, would you try one in street clothes? Oh, you would? Okay. Would you try one in street clothes on a stage that's slippery? Oh, you would? Okay. Would you try one in street clothes on a stage that's slippery in front of the world at 40 plus years old without warming up? I mean, you see how fewer and fewer hands are going up? Who amongst us can do the splits? Probably some hands just went up. Who amongst us is over 40 years old and can do the splits? Who amongst us is over 40 years old and can do the splits without warming up? I mean, there was so much that went in to that very brief dance-off that he had with Adesanya from an athletic standpoint. I bring that to you because when Rogan's talking about, that this doctor's talking about, it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, you know, and sooner or later he's going to get the credit. I got no problem with Yoel athletically in any way. As a wrestler or as an MMA fighter, I do struggle to comprehend his strategic approaches in many of his fights. To have an Olympic medal and a world gold medal, to be on the roster with Henry Cejudo and Daniel Cormier, and they both say Yoel Romero is the best wrestler in MMA. And then to have Yoel not use his wrestling, I struggle with some of his strategic approaches. But Yoel's brother was an Olympian for Cuba. Yoel was the Olympian for wrestling. His brother was the Olympian in boxing. So Yoel grew up around boxing, and there must have been a part of him that got so much wrestling out of his system, he wanted to change over and use his hands. I'm guessing. I don't know. I don't know why he doesn't use it more. You know, and speaking of Adesanya, by the way, Adesanya was doing this really interesting. See, Adesanya's mind is different. I get very interested in learning more about Adesanya and what makes him tick up here. And he's done some things that show ice running through his veins. And I will always go back to his ring entrance the night he fought for the undisputed title against Whitaker. 57,000 people. Right at home. It was in Australia. He's from New Zealand. Those two don't get along. A lot of pressure, a lot of things going in this. And he dances a choreographed dance with some high school buddies to the ring. The mere fact that he could be that composed, use that kind of energy, reset, take care of business, reset a second time after the match and call out Paulo Costa I thought told us a lot about his mind. So when he did this interview, he was just talking. And he said, man, I don't give a damn about this undefeated business. I don't know why anybody talks about that. There's no championship for undefeated. It's just this title that guys like to carry around with themselves. I'm not worried about it. In fact, I know I can be beat. I have been beat. Not only have I been beat in competition, and he's talking about his kickboxing days. He said, I get beat in the practice room someday. Come over by the gym. You'll see me look real good some days, and you'll see me get beat some days. What's that got to do? What's that got to do with me going out there and trying to compete? I mean, it's just one of these things where he's letting you in on this mindset, and he's completely right. Completely. You'll never get guys to quit overthinking their career, ever. They're too locked to it. One thing you have to be a good athlete is selfish. And people that are selfish are pricks. So athletes are selfish pricks. Okay. But when they do interviews, they really help to show that for you. All they know is their own career. They know who they fought, they know what they're ranked, and they know who they think that they should be fighting next. And they think that we know. We don't know at all. At all. Don't know who you fought 2 years ago or why you're even bringing it up. What's that got to do with next weekend? Don't know what the number next to your name is or your opponent's. What's it got to do with it? This is a sport that is judged on a 10-9 must system under the unified rules. If you can show me a page within that rule book that gives any kind of advantage to a guy that did something 2 years ago or to a guy that has a higher ranking next to his name than his opponent that is going to influence the criteria that the judges are sworn to adhere to, I'll change my conversation. I'll change my tone, but there's not. It's stupid. It's ridiculous. And then they want to start talking about their legacy. What does that mean? What kind of mind do you have? I got to tell you, I don't remember anything bad. Do you guys? I only remember the good. I don't remember anything bad. I'm sure I was picked on as a kid. I mean, I'm sure I had all of the same struggles and lived in just as regular a neighborhood as you guys did. Do you remember that stuff? You only remember the good. And it's only you that's going to remember it. This make-believeness that the whole rest of the world, and you're going to be looked at and coveted and treated in a different way for things that you did in a game when you were a kid, is weird. Life does not end well for those guys that want to talk about their laurels and the big basket that they scored in the playoffs their junior year. It doesn't end well. The world's a big place. Do not get stuck in the cracks. And when athletes start talking, it was so refreshing, I guess, to hear Adesanya talk about, yeah, of course I could lose. Get beaten in practice, been beaten before. What does that have to do with me going out and competing and trying to beat him? Nothing. It was very interesting. As light as it was, as simple as that was, you guys might have even heard this without me breaking it down. You might have even heard it and just kind of glossed on with your day. There's a lot in that. There's a lot into him dancing to the ring. There is. There's a reason other guys don't do it. They can't reset. They can't reset in time. They don't have the energy. They're focused on one thing. Adesanya's a very interesting guy. Very interesting guy.